Imagine that you feel steady and capable on one week, then suddenly overwhelmed by simple tasks, emotionally raw and completely unlike yourself the next. The smallest things start hitting you with unexpected intensity, as if your mind has shifted overnight. What if the emotional roller coaster you experience each month is the result of two very real interacting conditions: premenstrual dysphoric disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, amplifying each other in ways that most people don't fully understand? Stick around if you would like to learn more about life with managing two very life-affecting conditions. Hello and welcome back to Unwinding Minds. If you're new here, hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Rosie. I'm a chronically ill counsellor based in the UK who specialises in supporting disabled, neurodiverse and chronically ill people with managing their mental health. I also make these videos as a supplement to offering counselling services, and that is to support everyone, including those who cannot access counselling with a professional like myself at this time. It's important to state, however, that these videos are not a substitute for counselling. They're only intended to support you with psychoeducation. First of all, what is premenstrual dysphoric disorder? PMDD is a severe cyclical mood disorder that's linked to the menstrual cycle. It's often described as an intensified version of PMS, which is no small thing on its own, but that description can unfortunately minimize how serious PMDD is. People with PMDD may experience deep sadness or hopelessness, including intermittent thoughts of ending their own life. They might also feel intense irritability or anger, which can be hard to control. Anxiety or panic is also common. Emotional sensitivity or feeling really raw, as well as fatigue or brain fog and overwhelm. These symptoms typically appear in the luteal phase, that's the week or two before menstruation, and they improve shortly after the period begins. What's important to understand is that PMDD is not caused by abnormal hormone levels. Rather, it's driven by a heightened sensitivity to normal hormonal fluctuations, meaning that the body is doing something typical, but the brain experiences it much more intensely. PMDD is officially recognized in the DSM-5 as a mental disorder. In order to be diagnosed with it, your symptoms must occur in most menstrual cycles, be present in the final week before menstruation, improve within a few days after the period starts, and significantly interfere with work, relationships, or daily life. The symptoms often fall into several clusters: affective, such as mood swings, rejection sensitivity, or sudden sadness; behavioral, like withdrawal or decreased interest in activities; cognitive, including difficulty concentrating and brain fog; and physical, such as sleep disruption or appetite changes. Importantly, PMDD is considered a hormone sensitivity disorder, not a hormone imbalance disorder. At least that is true as of the time of this recording. As health conditions predominantly experienced by women get a little bit more research and better understanding, different ideas are likely to form over time as to why it develops. I won't dive quite as deep into what ADHD is, because I've talked about it already a lot on this channel, but some information is really important for context here to understand why I'm talking about them together today. ADHD is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects attention regulation, impulse control, emotional regulation, and executive functioning skills, such as planning and task switching. One of the most important features for us to consider for this topic is emotional intensity and difficulty with regulating feelings, commonly referred to as emotional dysregulation, meaning people with ADHD often feel emotions more deeply and quickly, and they may take longer to return to a baseline. ADHD affects about 5 to 7% of adults globally, although it is underdiagnosed, especially in women. That's another thing that's important to consider when you think about PMDD. Neurologically, ADHD is associated with lower baseline dopamine activity in certain brain pathways, differences as well in the prefrontal cortex, which are responsible for planning and for inhibition, and altered reward processing, where motivation can feel inconsistent or strongly dependent on interest. So, where does this information take us? Well, research suggests that people with ADHD are significantly more likely to experience PMDD. Whilst PMDD affects only around 3 to 8% of the general population, and up to 90% of those who menstruate experience some form of PMS, with PMDD representing really the severe end of the spectrum, studies indicate that rates amongst individuals with ADHD may be much higher, possibly between 20 to 45% in some findings. Research also shows that people with ADHD tend to report higher levels of severe premenstrual symptoms overall, with some studies suggesting a 2 to 3 times increased risk of PMDD compared with those without ADHD. At the same time, there is evidence that individuals with PMDD are more likely to meet the criteria for ADHD than the general population, suggesting that the relationship between these two conditions may be bidirectional. This is not a small overlap, which naturally leads to an important and compassionate question. Why do these two conditions so often occur together, and how can we help? Why these conditions amplify each other can be understood through a compassionate, nervous system-centered lens. During the menstrual cycle, fluctuations in estrogen and progesterone directly influence key neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine, which affect focus and motivation, and serotonin, which supports mood stability. Because ADHD already involves differences in dopamine regulation, the hormonal drop before menstruation, in the luteal phase especially, can lead to even lower dopamine availability, making it much harder to focus and reducing emotional resilience. At the same time, emotional regulation is already much more effortful in people with ADHD, often involving intense emotional waves, heightened sensitivity to stress or rejection, and difficulty returning to baseline after having strong feelings. When PMDD is layered on top, the emotional system can become faster, more reactive, and harder to soothe. So what might normally feel like frustration can quickly intensify into rage or despair or overwhelm, not because of a failure of coping, but because a neurological load issue is occurring. Executive functioning is also impacted from both directions. ADHD affects planning, organization, and decision-making year-round, while PMDD can add brain fog, fatigue, and reduced cognitive flexibility, making everyday tasks feel nearly impossible and often leading to shame, frustration, or a sense of just not being in control. Additionally, many people with ADHD already experience heightened sensitivity to noise or clutter or social demands. And if they're experiencing PMDD, this sensitivity can be increased further, leading to nervous systems being more easily overwhelmed, so that even small stresses can start to feel like too much. Research and clinical observations also show ADHD symptoms often worsen during the luteal phase. Medication effectiveness, such as stimulants, may feel reduced premenstrually. I've heard clients talk about this too. Sleep disturbances often also increase, which further impacts regulation. There's also a higher prevalence of anxiety and depression in amongst people with ADHD too, which is really worth thinking about when we talk about how they're interacting together. If you're navigating the overlap between PMDD and ADHD, well, gosh, it's very difficult. Seeking counselling can be a deeply supportive and important step for your well-being. Working with a trained therapist can help you to make sense of the cyclical nature of your emotions. It can help you to reduce self-blame and to develop strategies that are tailored to how your brain and body uniquely function. Because these conditions interact in really quite complex ways, affecting mood, focus, emotional regulation, having a consistent and compassionate space to process your experiences can improve both your self-understanding and day-to-day coping. Counseling can also help you to identify patterns across your cycle, help you to build practical tools for more difficult phases, and strengthen emotional resilience over time. Perhaps most importantly, it offers validation, a reminder that what you're experiencing is very real, it's understandable and deserving of support and love. You don't have to manage it all on your own. It really helps to seek out therapy with someone who is informed on this and is going to be able to help you navigate and normalize your experiences. If you've made it this far, please know that I'm very grateful to you. If this episode has resonated with you, please take a second to like it, to subscribe, or to share it with someone who might also need to hear this message too. You never know, you might actually make a huge difference in their lives as well. We make a lot of videos on this channel about chronic illness, disability, neurodivergence, and mental health. And I am always really interested to see what people want to see more of. If you have thoughts, please put them down in the comments section below. And do check the description if you're interested in working together with me on a one-to-one basis, either around ADHD or PMDD, as I do offer private counselling sessions. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Take really good care.